Okay, so that's controller. Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3.
Oh, way.
That's going to scare a lot of people when
mate.
it comes up.
Oh, that's just gone all faded. Okay, she's rocking and rolling.
What's your question?
Ah, those numbers, which I've got the piece of paper here still. Right, so we went for, you told me what 1 through to 9 was, which was really, really good because I did a little addition and I'll explain that to you in a minute, which came up interesting. 0 was the only thing that you never mentioned, you never covered, for a specific reason, I'm sure.
Got to start somewhere.
Yeah, okay. So you started at 1 instead of 0 though.
If you start counting from 1, that means 2 is your first number, 1.
Correct. Yeah, okay, but 0 has something, it must have a meaning. Like life, the universe, creation, everything, space, vacuum, power, God.
Every single thing that you mentioned, everything else is already there. That means it's already started. Okay, but in the Bible and so on like that, everything was created from nil and void. Okay,
From nothing, came from nothing.
nil and void. It's interesting when you brought that up and everything else because, see, on the first page of the Bible is all the history of the heavens and the earth. Actually, the earth and then the heavens. You got that?
Right.
And so on. But did you know none of those things come into play at all? Nothing ever happened till chapter 2. Chapter 2 is the action. Chapter 2 is the Spirit doing it. You understand? So God didn't do it, and Jesus didn't do it, but they had their play in it. God thought about it, Jesus did it, but the action, the Holy Spirit, the Spirit actually made it form. You understand? With all these things occurring. But when you read the Bible, you think, oh yeah, first page, chapter 1, because no chapter 0. Chapter 1 and everything else is your creation. No, it's not. It's the actual story and the thoughts and the deeds and how it was going to be done and everything else. But it never come into play exactly till chapter 2.
Right.
Because the action took place in chapter 2.
So what's your interpretation of the 0 then? It was what? It was nothing, or the universe as it was?
You can't say nothing because God was always there. So 0 is, if you're looking at, say, a heap of different things. If you're looking at, say, top dead centre on a motor, you've got the compression stroke and you've got the power stroke. So 0 is virtually centre.
Correct.
Isn't it?
Now centre, yeah, the middle
Well,
of the thing.
centre top and then centre bottom if you want to look at it.
Because a circle is a container.
Yeah.
If you take number 8, which is also used in infinity, right? Remembering. Right?
Remembrance.
Remembrance, yeah. Remembrance, that's right. What does it mean, remembrance?
Remembrance? Well, you see, from the very beginning, that's the funny part about these numbers and everything else. Jesus put all this together. Now, he didn't come in on the 8th day. Right? He was begotten. His Father had him. When did he have him? Well, he had him in the first 1,000 years, if you want to look at it. 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 8 says, don't be ignorant of this one thing, that one day with the Lord is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years one day. And then it goes on within that, he's going to, what he said he would do, he's going to do. Just because it's taken some time, see, what would 1 week be to you? 1 week. Not a lot of time. If you said you're going to achieve all this in 1 week. Okay? But if you look at a butterfly who's only lives for 1 day, 1 week is 7 lifetimes of his.
Yeah, exactly.
Understand? 7 lifetimes. So if you're looking at you, the man, as being as a butterfly, man was, he had 1,000 years built upon him. That was in the garden. Okay? And God created him. Made him outside, stuck him in. Okay? Now Adam was in the garden for 1,000 years. 1,000 years with no time on him. He was not meant to have a start time. He was supposed to just be born and go on. But he stuffed up. And he stuffed up within that 1,000 years. And then the Lord said, in the very day that you stuff up,
Mm.
you shall surely die. Okay? So Adam lived to be 930. What's God's numbers? Sevens.
Yeah.
So God's action is what? 7? No. 777? No. 70s. The action is 2 of.
Mm.
And the 2 of is tens. You know, the singles, tens, hundreds.
Yeah.
So that's 70.
Mhm.
So when you look at it and everything else, 930
Mhm.
Adam lived to, and what makes 1,000? What makes the one day?
70.
70.
Yeah, 70.
Okay,
Yeah,
now at
that's
the
right.
tower you go on and everything else. So he gave him 930 years.
Mm.
He died within that day. Okay, so God kept his numbers.
Mm.
All right, now when you come down to the Tower of Babel, when man tried to reach the heavens and be like God himself, and he built this massive tower,
Mhm.
and all the people were of all one language, one colour,
Mhm.
one everything else, all the animals, everything. Okay, and what God did, he said, well, they're getting a too big of imagination.
Mhm.
Let's go down and fix that up a little bit. So they come down and everything else, and they confused all the different tongues. They changed their colours. All the animals went off with the people in different. They were all there going crazy because he's talking to him one minute and he can understand. Next minute he can't understand a thing because he's talking now what we understand, Japanese or Chinese or Russian or. And this is what the languages were split, right?
Right.
Babel,
Mhm. Babel. Yeah.
Babel,
Mm.
Babylon,
Mm.
right? That was the ones there. So it was all Babel and confusing language.
That's where Babel fish comes from.
Babel,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Right? A bib is, right? Bible or Bible is language,
Mm.
right? And Babylon
Mhm.
is just rant and raving. Just stop babbling on, will you?
Mm.
So it's kept its thing and everything else. So
Yeah.
he'd come down, confuse their tongues, and they were all colour changed and all went off into different parts of the world, and all the animals were changed a fraction in that degree as well and went off with the people. Not that the evolution took place, but he kept the animals as they were, but certain ones went to certain places with these people. So that was a complete confusion and everything else. But at the Tower of Babel, what he did was he took away all the peoples. Give it to you a bit better so you'll understand it if you're reading it. From Noah's flood on, Noah's flood was 120 years building the ark. 120 years building it. Okay?
I thought we knocked it up in an afternoon.
And after that, right, after that, man and everything else sort of didn't live right up in the 900s and so. He varied from 120 up and down a bit. But from the Tower of Babel, no man has ever gone past 120. What he gave him was 70. He said from the Tower of Babel, man will have a 70 on him, and a score is 20.
Yeah.
So 20, 40, 60, he's going to have 60 put upon him, which is the action of doing wrong because they were trying to be like God.
Mhm.
Okay? Trying to be like their creator. So he put 60 on him and 10. And 10 is the new star. You go on to 9 and then you hit 10. As we went from Genesis 9, we get all of Noah and all his generation before. Now Noah was around when Adam was around. Adam was around when Noah was around. But Adam died just prior to Noah actually building the boat and taking over. You understand?
Yeah.
It's that short period of time within that. Anyway, so he knocked man down to 70. He gave him a variation,
Mhm.
70 up to 120. But no man's gone past that 120. You understand? So the average is around the 70. So what he did was he took the 900s off the person and gave him his number back. You understand? Gave him the 70 within that variation, and it's got something to do with Noah's as well, you know.
Okay. Something else that I have another question for you. If you don't mind.
But your zero, you're understanding about zero a little bit now. There had to be a start time if you're looking at a period of starting and everything else. God was always there, so the zero doesn't apply to him.
No, but
Okay?
zero, but
The
also,
Lord God in the Bible, the word Lord God, is not the Father, is not God the Father, not the Father in charge. Lord, if you want to go to England and everything else, is not the King or the Queen. You understand? it's the next one's down. And the Lord God mentioned in the Bible is the one that people have seen. Nobody's ever seen God the Father. Nobody, any time. All the way through, nobody. So who did they see? Who walked and talked with Adam in the cool of the evenings? Who was up on the mountain that they only saw the back, not the face of, with Moses?
Now that's the man I once met.
Right, well that there is Jesus. Okay, not mentioned the name Jesus till he come along 2,000 years ago, which was 4,000 years from Adam. But he was the one who created everything, every single thing, with his hands and his mouth and his everything else.
Let me just explain the dream I had once, right? It was an incredibly interesting dream. I met this man and he wore a white suit and he had a white beard.
You got the wrong guy, well.
Okay, well let me tell you who it is and you can tell me.
You got to mark the number of your name and number on him.
He had a white beard, a white suit.
Yep.
And it's interesting. When I saw his face, it was extremely interesting. And I said, who are you? He said, I am your father. And he said something else as well, a few other things about love and protection. And I said, okay. And he said, now I'm going to take you back. And he said, these people will escort you. And he had two people that walked me away. Didn't kind of drag me or anything like that, but they walked me away and held my arms, not to imprison me, just to go as a guide thing. And when I tried to remember his face, he said, don't look back at my face. When I tried to remember his face, the further away I got, and the harder I tried to remember, the less I remembered of his face. Don't know what that was. Don't know what that was, and I didn't say he's God, but I'm just saying he was interesting. It was too much. It wasn't a dream. It was in my sleep, but it didn't feel like a dream. I've had a few of those unusual things that have happened, but
well, that guy, tall, slim,
he was
tall and everything else, and in white clothes, right down to the ground, and has long hair, a beard, a moustache, and they're white, and so on like that. That is not Jesus.
Who is it? Why do you say I'm your father, which he didn't think like my father?
Well,
Which
did you know if you chose, let's say, if you chose a different parent or a different following, you chose somebody else to be your king, your creator, your boss, and followed his ways and means and so on like that. Now he was telling you he was, but you followed that wrong thing. You're under delusion, right? And delusion is a mental disorder, signs of insanity, to believe a lie and 1,000,000% think it's true.
Okay, well what was that dream then? Was it a delusion or?
The guy was trying to delude you, and this is where your name and this is where your SS and all your numbers and everything else you apply come in. Because you, with the Lord, he says, there is no confusion with me. Confusion is not mine, saith the Lord, but it is of Satan the devil. When he does something, says something, shows something, everything else, it is 1,000,000% clear as a bell, and you never ever lose it or fades away or anything else. You understand?
So
you are living it and you stay in it.
So whoever the entity was that I had met in that dream was what? Someone mischievous?
Okay, well, if you're going to do that and everything else, not for Peter's sake so much as well, but he don't want to go so far into the Bible as such, but you got to sort of ask yourself, what does Jesus look like? See, no man's seen the Father, but they have seen the Son. Okay?
Yeah,
so
I
what does
wouldn't
the
picture
Son
Jesus
look like?
with white hair. I pick him with black hair. If I had to create, like envisage Jesus, right, in my mind, I would pick him with black hair.
Okay.
Actually, a very similar hairstyle and bearding.
Okay, well, if Jesus has got black hair to you, then the other guy who's against him, who's supposed to be our Father that we chose from the Garden of Eden on, and he has to run his time period of doing his creating. See, in the beginning there was 6,000 years in creation apparently, and the seventh day God rested. Now that seventh day was when Adam was in the garden. You know, that day was 1,000 years long. You understand? So 6,000 years, and we broke it up into two sets of three. You understand? You know, with the water, light, you know, light, water, and ground, and so on. So it's in 2 sets of 3s, but adds up to 6. Now at the end of that, man was made, and so on like that. But on the 7th day, God rested from all the work that he had done. Okay? Made, done, everything else. Now, all the animals and birds and everything else were named, and everything else, created, made, but they weren't named. So Adam got the job of naming it. Could you name every single thing on this planet in one day, 24 hours? No. That's because people don't understand what the day is. They don't read 2 Peter chapter 3 verse 8. They don't put the time period together. They don't have that set of numbers to actually give you an idea. Now, God doesn't have any time on him. Always was, always will be. He's bigger than the universe, smaller than the atom. There's no end to him. Okay? But Jesus had a start. He had an end 4,000 years later. Or from Adam on. It's not his 4,000 years. He had a restart. He died and come back to life. He now continues on, and you can't kill him anymore. He gave up his life for us. And what life was that? It's complete life. And he was under the same hope and everything else as us. That main guy who don't ever die will raise you back up. Was he sure? He went to death. Was he sure? Are you sure? No. He had the same feelings and deeds and everything else. He was born as a human being like us. He went through all those things, just with a different belief in his head. Now, he could have been totally deluded, thinking that his father was God, and he's some strange miracle child without a father. He only had a mother, and he's the son of God. Now, there's stacks of people been like that. But did they do what he did? Did they achieve what he achieved? Did they actually come back from the dead and everything else and actually show themselves and do all these things and ascend to heaven? No, we've only got some sort of a people's view on that this took place. Okay, but it's a pretty good record because it's the one thing that has stayed with man that hasn't faded out of his head. These stories, you know, the Bible, the history of that, just it's one thing that has never changed, the born. But anyway, so Jesus himself has a time. And when you look in there, and the Lord said, it is Jesus saying it. And when you come down to 2 Peter chapter 3 verse 8, he's there talking to his people, saying, my beloved, don't be ignorant of this one thing. To the Lord, every day is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day to him. You understand? So you've got no time to God, so you can put that down as 0 if you like. No start, no finish, 0. And then from then on is what has happened. Now with Jesus, it's happening in thousands. In you, his creation, is happening in, well, you'd probably call it 24 hours.
Rest one day per day.
Yeah. You know, dark and light, evening and morning. Not the other way around, evening and morning.
Another question, which is even more innocuous. Okay.
That's a big word again.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
same word as
fill
the
it
other
in.
day. I explained it the other day, didn't I?
Well, before you go with that question, I'll just give you this. That guy that we chose as our father now, what is running, God had his 6,000 creation of his things. Okay? And then he rested. Now at the end of that, this other guy come in and stuffed up the mind of his created, which was Adam and Eve. And that stuffed up all the creation from then on. Not as creation into evolution, but creation as such. And then man chose to follow this other guy. Now he has to have a period of running. He is the opposer. The opposer is opposite. Now he'll be opposite in every way, shape and form. When he looks good, he's really bad. When he looks bad, he's really, well, not so good. But anyway. And when he has, say, black hair, the other guy would have to have white hair. Or if he has white hair, the other guy has to have black hair. Do you understand?
Yeah, I might mention.
And when one guy is tall, the other guy has to be short. And when one guy is absolutely beautiful, the other guy has to be ugly as a hat full of ding-dongs. You understand?
Yeah, well that dream didn't influence my life. It was just a dream that I remembered, but it was too different to be a dream. Anyway, my other question, the innocuous question, is your, you know how you're allergic to eggs, right?
Now I'm not allergic to eggs, I'm allergic to sulfur.
Ah, That's the question I was asking. Were you always allergic to sulphur,
No.
or was it since your accident?
No, neither.
When did it happen? You know, maybe if it's personal,
I don't have
Okay.
anything personal. When I was growing up, as far as I can figure out and everything else, my father was very old, very wise in his medicines and everything else. And when mosquitoes are in the house, because it's a very small, very dark, very gloomy house and everything else, and there was clothes hanging up out the back, and they were half wet and half things just hanging on racks. He used to go and burn pure sulphur,
Right.
and that smell stunk like buggery.
Mhm.
You understand?
Yeah.
And when I go and look at Shrek and everything else, it smells pretty good. You know, you seen Shrek?
Mhm.
He says, you know,
Oh yeah.
thought
yeah,
he
that's right.
thought
yeah,
he blew
does.
off. You know, fuck.
They're good for ogres. Put it that way.
Yeah, ogres. Mate, if I blew, you'd be dead now.
Mm.
Anyway, so it's brimstone or sulphur, and that puts off an awful stink. And it used to get rid of the mosquitoes and everything else, and cockies and you name it out of the house. But it got into things, and I suppose, growing up and everything else, that I went through that so much and everything else. And I never ate eggs when I was younger. Everybody else did, but I didn't. I grew up virtually on potatoes, boiled potatoes, butter and bread.
Mhm.
Just put the potato onto the bread, hot or cold, doesn't matter, with the, you know, and that's it.
Yeah.
That was it. I didn't like meat, I didn't like any of the other stuff, but probably a change happened, and then I got polluted with the actual too much of it. You understand? See, if you have too much what do you call it, the, you know, snake bite,
Mm.
anti-venom,
Mm.
that'll kill you.
Mm.
Anything too much salt, what you need, that'll kill you. Too much sugar, that'll kill you.
Well, strangely enough, if you have like, you drink a litre of arsenic, right, it won't kill you. It'll make you vomit, and your stomach just rejects it, and you vomit the stuff off.
There's too much of everything is no good for you, and too little is no good for you. You've got to have that happy medium,
The balance. Yeah.
the balance of everything else, you know.
I remember I walked into a pub once, and it's just, you know, like with my brother-in-law
Did it hurt?
years ago.
Bang,
In a
straight in the
pub,
door.
we
Forgot
had a
that.
drink because we
No,
stopped off on
you
a
said
trip.
you walked into a pub.
He's joking.
No, stopped off for a drink. No, and we started talking to this chap, and he said, I talk to ghosts. And I said, okay. And we were laughing and joking for a while, and I whacked him in the mouth. And he said, why'd you do that? I said, I always want to strike a happy medium. You're right. Great.
So you can joke in one way of his own and expect us to
Yeah,
laugh, and then when
yeah.
you
No, you
crack
can
it
laugh.
funny, he don't laugh and
No,
he don't
well, he
get it.
didn't get it.
No,
He's
if you-
got to wait for the
If you don't
tape.
laugh, I've got to laugh on your behalf to keep the energy going.
Right.
No, you see, a good joke is the ones that don't actually, you have to
No.
emphasise for laughter and everything else, it just slowly creeps up on you.
That's the point that I'm making. That's why I enjoy doing my little puns.
Okay, go
Go.
with the question.
Sulphur.
No,
The answer.
with the other question.
What was the third
There was a
question?
dispute.
Hmm?
A dispute.
Yes, thank you very much. On Monday. Was it Monday? Yeah.
It was Monday.
Okay. You wrote S, N, 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 and you put the symbols on. On the top of my hand, I seem to remember this because I looked at it. I avoided leaving the shower. I avoided washing the hand because I wanted to keep it.
Bloody pommies.
He didn't get it in his hand, he's got three N's and one S.
Yeah.
No,
That's okay.
N, S, S. But
Not
this
the way
one
you
here,
said
did
it.
you put S negative, south negative, on the top of my hand? Thank you.
Yes.
Oh,
And S
bugger.
positive.
That's why I put the lead to the inside of your fingers.
Okay.
Did you not notice with your sister that underneath her toes
Mhm.
didn't seem to do too much with the biting or
Yeah.
you know, the reaction?
Yeah, yeah.
And when I put it on top of her toes
Mm.
and so on like that, not straight off, but yeah, she jumps. But if I put it back underneath, she don't.
That was north positive, wasn't it, on the top of this hand, left hand?
Yeah, north pole positive. Yeah, some people would call that an opposite to north pole negative because they don't understand that negative has positive and plus and minus within
Yeah,
it,
Yeah.
or two-way flow within the one thing.
Mm.
Do you understand? Which has opposite charges. You understand? Like your water going left and one going right, you've got an opposite charge. So you've got it in your hands and everything else, top and bottom of your hands.
Mm.
You've got it all around your face, it's all over your body in different sections.
Yeah.
Okay? Why do we get the reaction only under our eye with the actual negative lead? Don't know. Do you want to know why?
No, I don't know why.
No, do you want to know why?
Yes, I do.
You do, okay. This might be pretty good. Okay. When we go to the Amazon jungle,
Mhm.
we might find some monkeys over there. And the monkeys attract the mates with a big sign. Head down, bum up, and it's bright red, okay?
Mhm.
And that then attracts the mate. You got that?
Yeah, got it. Got it.
Right. Now that red colour and that outputting of that energy and everything else to the monkey and so on like that is it the male to the female or the female to the male?
Well, actually, in the animal world, I found that the males try to attract the female.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
They've got the most
So
powerful
yeah,
plumage.
they are. The male itself
Mhm.
has the bright red on his bum.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
He doesn't show his face. He shows his bum. Now that attracts the female. Now in the female, she shows a face,
Mm.
and in her face she blushes. The same as the human here.
Mm.
Okay, except male and female in the human and everything else have that red bum
Mm.
there. The woman, and she puts it on
Mhm.
and everything else. When
The
she
blush.
wants to go out to attract the man and everything else, she either pinches him
Yeah.
and they go red there, or she goes and puts the red
Mhm.
bum
Rouge.
on the
Yeah.
rouge,
Mm.
you know, blush, flush,
Blush.
everything else on the cheek there,
Mm.
there, and they don't know why.
Mm.
All right, but that is apparently attracting the male.
Part of body language. Yeah.
You know, not on the bum but on the face.
Women
Okay,
also.
now that red
Mm.
is a colouring of your blood under the blood vessels underneath your skin and everything else.
Mm.
You get a scare, you get a fright, you get turned on, you get all this stuff and everything else what appeals to you and so on like that as such.
Mm.
And that part there can either go freezing cold with a massive scare,
Mhm.
or the opposite is it goes bright red.
Yeah, white or red. Yeah.
Okay, now with the red and everything else, it is south pole positive output.
Right.
So if you're talking magnetism and everything else, magnetism, or when you're also talking electricity, because you can turn electricity into electromagnetic field and electromagnetic field into electricity,
Yeah,
vice
right.
versa, as such. So what would be the opposite pole
Mm.
to south pole positive cheek? Because south pole positive is hot, is very hot. It's hot and red.
Should be North Pole negative.
Ah. And if you put those two together, there should be a reaction, a fight,
Well, there should be, well, North, no,
a kick,
one-
a boot,
there'd
a
be
tickle,
movement.
not a joining up of happy medium.
No, it should be a charge, I think, because you're going from one to another, diametrically opposite poles.
Yeah, see, it's not just positive and negative. You have positive plus on your face.
Mm-hmm.
I've already been through all these and found
Yes.
that out.
Yeah.
Okay? So, and this all come to me before I found out about the polings and the charges and everything else. God gave me all these understandings on how to check, what to do, where to line up, and where it is, without reading anything, what anybody else has ever done. And if I did, I wouldn't believe them anyway, because something else, some of their stuff might line up to what God gave me,
Mm-hmm.
right? But some of it don't. So I don't want to know their polluted stuff. You
Interesting
understand?
that you should say that. My sister Carol said, I wonder if there are any other people like Joe in the world and what would happen if they all got together.
Massive, terrible, no good.
Hmm?
No good at all. Couldn't stay with each other for 2 minutes, because that's not what your purpose is.
So we better get going then.
Never it's not meant to be.
Mm.
You understand?
Why not? Just
Well, let's just say that Jesus had 12 disciples, and the whole 12 disciples and everything else were all taught the one lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And they were all emphasised the whole lesson, and that's all they did, and they can all do the same jobs and everything else. So what they do, all stick together in the one house? That's a waste.
Mm.
And each
Wow.
one of them would all have their own trace elements and everything else, and one be better than the other. One want to do this first, and the other one to say, no, I don't want to do it today, and so on and so on. There'd be all too big
Really,
of a
a group
dispute.
coming together like that, a group of peers, right? What I would assume is, let's say,
Well, if they're all under the same belief and everything else, and they're none of them wrong, because they've all got the truth from the Holy Spirit, what in the flipping heck were they doing together?
well, conferences and symposiums, right? They're there for everyone to share their knowledge and then create something new from it. To
But what if
improve
they're
it.
all got the same knowledge?
Well, it's no good having them together then.
There you
Right,
go.
It's a waste of time.
There you go. So that'd be a terrible,
Nothing
terrible
comes from
thing.
nothing.
that's it. You wouldn't get anywhere.
Okay, so
They wouldn't be able to say anything to each other because they already know it.
So what was the right one, the opposite, by the way? You
Anyway.
said South Pole positive and I said North Pole negative.
Huh?
That was wrong, was it? South Pole positive, North Pole negative. You said the opposite. What's the opposite of it?
Whoa. The camera missed all that and everything else. You took two fingers and you pointed to two sides of your two cheeks.
I don't know why I did that. That was just like that. You pointed, let's say, to your, well, to that one there now.
Yeah, this is what he done.
South Pole positive. You said,
Opposite.
yeah,
I never
South
said
Pole
that.
positive. You said, what's the opposite to me, right? And I said North Pole negative. Was that correct or incorrect as an opposite?
No, you got South Pole positive, yeah. South Pole positive coming out of both eye cheeks there. You both fluster up.
Oh, righto.
One doesn't go red and one go purple or black or anything else. They both there is a testing point.
Right.
So if you want to test whether you have in the body put through the set, you're putting North Pole negative because science teaches that electrons flow from negative to positive. So we just go along with him for a minute. Okay? Not going along with him for that idea in any way, shape or form. But it looks like you might be, but it's not. I'll tell you what. The North Pole negative is the cold clean. You're talking about summer and winter, okay? Winter, cold, clean, you know, not so hot and dirty. Doesn't worry you too much and so on like that unless it gets too cold. But you got a North Pole negative what comes onto a cold. Even though you can have a warm day in a winter, that is North Pole positive.
North Pole positive.
The charge factors are different. Summertime, to give you summer, is South Pole positive. Even though in summer you can have a nice coolish day or you know, a cold day within that. You can get rain which can turn cold. You can look in the sky and you can see out there the sky looks on after rain and everything else. One looks crystal clean and beautiful and fresh and smells good and makes you energized. And the other one looks dull and dirty and crappy and makes you feel ugh. And there's your positive and your negatives. Or virtually, your negative and your positive. Negative's the clean energizer and positive's not. And after rain you can go down to a river which hasn't had rain for a long time. And the river looks greenish or clean. It can rain somewhere out there. You can go down and look at the river and the river's filthy dirty. Because the whole energy field what that storm created out there, not the rain and water coming down, the energy field in the air turns that water dirty. Because it sucks up the muck out of the flaming river and puts it into the water. And then you can have filthy dirty river like floodwater and everything else. Or this river, don't know why it's filthy dirty today, there's no rain for 2-3 months. Why is it filthy dirty? And then we get a little bit of rain somewhere, a storm comes in, and you go down the river and the flipping top of the water, well the river is crystal clean. How? Energy change swapped it. Changed it around. That's why we play water with.
So North positive is
So
cool and clear.
yeah, I mean if you go out to a dam, you go for driving the road and you see a man-made dam and everything else, and one kind of filthy dirty water within 200 something. You know your number 2?
Yeah.
It's 200s. Why'd you go to hundreds? Well, I thought we would have went to the action which is, you know, 220s or then 200s. Well, you didn't do it, and it didn't happen in front of you. So it's already happened from a heavenly estate, you know, some invisible type thing done this. Right? It's happening continuous. It's not the earth, that's a heavenly estate we would call that. So that happens in your 3s. Understand? So within 200 of that, whether it's feet, meters or yards or whatever.
Inches.
Okay.
Too close. The two
Too
things
close.
be together.
So what happens is that well, it depends on how much you got there and where it's flowing and how it's flowing. You can get it within that.
The dam will.
Okay, the action of. Within that, you've got one dirty. You go around the corner, or you go up the road to the next dam. It'll be clean. Or within that flame and around that dam, you'll find a spring.
So yeah, really.
A spring, and it'll be crystal clean. Now that crystal clean one will be cold, clean, weed, and fish, lively stuff. And animals smell it and go for miles for it. They'll run for it.
And that's
Right.
South Pole negative.
No, the clean one is North Pole negative.
North Pole negative.
Right, and the dirty one has a South Pole positive charge on it. If you want to go look at it and everything else, you go down to the Sunnybrand Chicken Farm down just out of Casino the other side, and you'll find out that they had a very small chicken farm at first, and they were pulling out, they didn't know at first what they were doing, they were pulling out of this small spring, and the spring had weed and fish, and it was clean as a whistle, could not dirty it if you tried, and then they wanted to go bigger chicken farm. So then they spent millions of dollars and went and built this monstrous big dam, only just beside it, right? Anyway, 200 yards away. They dug this massive big dam. And then, every drop of water in that dam is putrid mud and they can't clean it up. They've tried every substance, legal and illegal, to try and clean that up. They can't clean it up. So they've been buying water, and that dam water is zero useless. Zero useless for any damn thing. So then they started digging down into the ground, all around it, right? So that one's filthy, dirty brown. So they start digging in the ground, they get bore water. Why didn't it come up filthy, dirty? And why didn't it come up the same colour as the flaming spring? Because the spring come out of the ground. But didn't it come up bluey grey, mineraled, you know, calcium, yucky? They can't use it either. So they spent $12,000 and put a tap on it. Blocked it off. They can't use it either. So they can't use the dam and they can't use the bore water. You know where it is out there, Peter? So, and they can't go back to the spring because they'll suck all this, suck it all away in the spring. So they've got to buy water. Okay, so they wanted to go out there and clean up the water. So somebody else stuffed all the idea up and everything else. Won't go into it on tape or anything else. But I took some water out of there, took it into shed in here, and in front of the people, just within seconds, crystal cleaned it. And you couldn't put any dirt into it. It wouldn't go into it. It falls straight out and stayed clean. And then we took the rocks. I said, mate, the thing around here is these rocks are even South Pole positive. If you were able to change the rocks, your water would be clean. If you could change your water to a different charge, your water would be clean, and your rocks would change their voltage. But I said, you lose your spring. They said, what spring? I said, the spring 200 yards up there. They said, yeah, well, that's what we used to pull out. I said, yeah, I know. I said, it had to be, and that one's clean, and this is dirty. And you understand, it's layered. It stacks that way. And that's what's happening in your body. In all the points in your body, while we go to these healing points and everything else, is because they are layered. And they're not. Your blood isn't just flowing in sections, in little blocks. It's spiraling. It's spinning like water. All water spins. Rain spins. And within a rainstorm and everything else, why you take water out of a tap and everything else is already laid flat in the ground and it's got, right? And you might turn it down a pipe and everything else. You haven't put the charge in it. Because on the ground, it's touched the ground, it's flattened itself, it's going the wrong way. Useless. Okay? Falls out of the sky. You put the rain out of a tap onto a garden to make something grow, you need hundreds of gallons. You get one little sprinkle of rain from the sky onto that, poof, dark green, doesn't need much. Why? Because all your waters are doing this, your raindrops are spinning and they're building up massive charge in them. And all the different charges, because it's, well, you say, well, how do you get all the different charges? You mean you're getting positives and negatives? Well, you are, but if it's a nice clean storm with a nice charge, then it's all positive and negative North Pole. And all the variables of in between North as well, and South, and all in between, you understand? Right around your whole circle. But it's not South Pole as a potential. It's sort of like when they found the North Pole. No, they didn't find North Pole. They made all these variables, but headed them off everywhere else. All these other ones in between. Until they dissected the thing and everything else and said, well, that's the centre, that's it. No, it's not. And this is what happens within the rain. You get an overall North Pole. You get all these polarity rains in between. Polarities which are different, but the pole's there. Understand?
Yeah. So
and then if South Pole comes and everything else, you get all the South Pole. But then you get the polarities within that, which can be still good stuff as well. When it goes through a numbering system as well, it still works out as good. But if it comes around to the wrong number, which it is, ends up wrong number, like we would say South Pole positive, as such, you will get dirty water and you can't clean it. No matter what you do, you won't clean it.
And South Pole negative, what would that give then?
Well, South Pole negative can give you warm water, but clean water.
Clean but warm, I see. Whereas North negative gives you clean but cool.
Yeah. Understand?
Yeah.
Where also North Pole negative can give you warm water, but always clean. And always good for you, where South Pole positive won't be. Right?
Yeah.
It's the clean water what animals will just go straight past. It's the clean water in a dam what won't grow the fish and won't have the weeds. And you say, well, it's clean. Go and taste the damn stuff. Alright?
Gotcha.
And it will produce energy fields which will create everything wrong that you don't want. Do you understand?
Gotcha, yeah.
And that's what your body does. When it gets a wrong charge on it, it will produce outside. So why are we getting all these diseases and sicknesses and lockups and you know, cancers, lupus, leukemias and all these different things in different places on our body? Why are they only going to different places? Why don't they just go, see ya? If they're so deadly, why don't they just kill you in one go? Well, it's because of all the different energies which are in different parts of your body, which you either place there yourself, or your minerals which you took in went to there, or the rubbish and food that you're eating is actually taken and thrown all what you might need somewhere and storing in certain places the wrong charged minerals, wrong charged elements.
So they're in the wrong place.
Yeah, well, they're just not meant to be there. You see, some people who are fat as mud and everything else, you think, well, why are they fat as mud? Because they're not really eating that much and they exercise and they sweat. Why do some people, you know it, why do some people on a hot day don't even feel the hot day and don't drip? They can put an overcoat on and work like buggery in the hot sun, don't even get a drip on their lip.
Yeah.
And then another person has stripped every damn thing off. They're drinking water like buggery and everything else, and it's just run it and they stink.
Yeah.
And you say, well, that person ain't clean. Pong, sweat, stink. It's the wrong energy, you know.
Like that.
Yeah. And then you got the
So that's it, South
pheromones,
Pole.
right? You got the pheromones what God put into a human body and everything else to turn on your mate. And you know, everybody else around and everything else don't smell that beautiful sweet smell of that person except the mate. All the rest, so I either can't smell anything or else actually it doesn't smell that good to me. You smell a bit sweaty, or you smell a bit skinny, you smell something.
Yeah, that happened with her one once, I remember.
Right?
She said, oh, you smell nice.
Yeah.
And when I smelt myself, it smelled like a baby smell, but she just identified it like a pheromone. That was,
It's what happens to us. You understand? Like with us, with a woman and everything else. So everybody says, oh, it's all fishy. Smells fishy.
crap.
I didn't say what, but smells fishy, right? But do you know, to her mate who's attracted to her and she's attracted to him and everything else, Dad don't have any smell. It is actually sweet, tasting and sweet
Musk.
to the nose. And
Actually, a sweet musk.
it's not musk. It is. It's.
Well, to me, it is. It's how you relate it. You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
black to
whatever
one
comes
person
to each
could be
person.
blue to another.
Yeah. But that then doesn't. But to anybody else, yeah, how could you do? It's fishy, stink. But it's not.
That is amazing.
At that time.
Yeah.
That's what the body does.
Mm.
Do you understand? Now Pete here does in his card I saw and everything else. He's a fliptomist. Sorry, a hypnotist or whatever you call it.
An imaginist.
Yeah, that'll do. And you get other people to imagine other things within that fliptomist. Okay, so you hypnotise them and so on, and then you tell them that the onion smells beautiful and tastes beautiful, and that's what they get. You understand? Where everybody else couldn't do it, and you bring them back out of that, and they and then that smell goes right through their body. But you know what? That onion smell don't go through their body if they're fliptomist at the time. If it went into them as a sweet tasting pear, they won't have the onion smell come
No.
back out of their body.
It'll be positive.
You understand? It's the brain has flipped the, when it went into the body, it did not accept any of the onion smell or the onion charge as such. It accepted the other charge which don't have the pong and that's what comes back at you, because that all went out with waste. Understand?
Yeah.
So the body can either accept because it's a battery charger, or you can apply charge. You can apply the onion and the onion will go through the body, or your body can actually use it and change it. Throw away what it doesn't need and keep what it does need.
Yeah.
And then swap its charge. use the charge that it needs, get rid of the other. This is where some of these people are, and it's working. I wouldn't do it, but it's working and everything else for some people whose body is totally out of whack. They say, go and drink your piss.
Oh yeah, urine therapy, yeah.
Urine therapy.
No, you're taking the piss out of me.
Taking the piss out of you, yeah?
AOV
And when you
use
take the
that.
piss out of you, if you want to put it that way, the body is throwing that as a waste. What happens if the body's charge was out of order? They are keeping the wrong charge stuff and they're pissing the stuff they need. When it comes out through the flaming, exhaust pipe
Yeah.
and so on like that, they've thrown the best bit of them. You take it back in with its charge on it, and why does it actually start healing those kind of people?
Because it creates the balance in the body that's required.
Now it now has an opposite charge on it, and that one will react in the body and fix up what you've now been storing.
Yeah.
It's sort of like venom and anti-venom, snake biting and anti-snake bite.
Yeah.
You understand? It's doing that to some people, but a person who is already holding the right charge in their body, their piss is absolutely a killer to them.
Yeah, it's poison.
It's poison. It's no good. It'll create.
Well, healthy people should never really do that.
Yeah.
It's only for people who are sick, and obviously their charges are the wrong way around.
That's it. And when I said exhaust pipe and everything else, I meant it for another reason too. There's a guy called Bill Hale. He's now dead. He was my uncle. Never met him. Didn't know about him. And so on like that. He come from up Cuyahoga way, up Cougar way and everything. And Kelly Webb's alive with all the vintage cars and stuff and everything else, and he's out there, Lyons Road and so on, Cougar. Kelly's been in a vehicle where my uncle took the exhaust piss. No, the exhaust emissions. Now science says all those emissions out of an exhaust pipe should be explodable. And you want an explosion in your motor. But you can't put any of the exhaust stuff back in your motor and make it fire. And you can't take those exhaust emissions out of the back of your exhaust and make them detonate. In fact, if you don't want your fuel tank to go bang when you weld it up, take the exhaust emissions, where they're all explodable gases, so science says by its factor, by those gases, what should be as bangies. Okay, you wouldn't put it in the fuel tank and then weld your fuel tank, you'd blow yourself to smithers. But what's in the fuel tank? Wet petrol, vapours turning into explodable shit. And it's saturated into the metals and everything, and even if the tank is bone empty, she'll explode better on you. So what do? You stick a pipe over the exhaust pipe and put your fuel tank, start your car and drive those gases into the fuel tank for a few minutes. Take them off, weld your tank, don't go bang. What's the difference? They should be going bang. Science says they should be bangable. Well, my uncle turned them bangable. Again, he had a circular motor. Straight out the exhaust and back in the front. Over a stainless steel plate, grid plate. I don't know what he used as a charge and everything else, but go and ask Kelly Webb. He's been in the vehicle. Okay, and he took it straight out the exhaust and put it straight back in the flame in front again, and the motor fired those gases as they should have been fired. He was changing the voltage potential on the charge of the gases. And those gases went back into the motor and went bang.
Yeah, it was called in the days when it was done during the war, exhaust gas recirculation.
Yeah, and actually some of these people
Used to-
use it today.
The old Wirraways, the aircraft, used to get 25% more time in the air.
Yeah, 25% more. Well, this fella here put a little bit of extra kick to it and got 100% more time.
Right.
He got what he
He
put
got
in
it
back
circled.
out again, and all he had to do to increase speed, you say, well, hang on, let's think about that. What he put in, he can only get back out again. That's what science says. A load of rubbish. All he had to do is improve the charge for acceleration. Improve the charge more for acceleration. Indeed, the acceleration was